Good morning, good evening, good everything, wherever you are. And welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. I am your Sensei Al Bob, your griot, and don't believe a word I say. And we're here. It's early morning here on the eastern seaboard of these United States. And I was trying to talk last night about, things are pretty weird right now, with Carrot Top, Pinhead, and all his sycophants, government, and the deep state, and the secret hand, and the powers that shouldn't be, and well, our legislatures are the best money can buy, and there's all, we have the internet with these platforms like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube that give unbelievable access to guys like me, right? So there's all kinds of information coming out, right? So there's this whole truth movement, and there's this whole disclosure movement, and there's guys like the League Prophet and the Camelot, and Stop the Crime, and Black Journalist, and True Stream Media, and Graceful, and a whole bunch. I mean, there's tons, thousands, millions, really, and not just in English speaking countries, but around the friggin' world. So, um, and then in the mix comes this coronavirus, right? And it seems like going to be a pandemic. And again, there are a number of really good websites that are keeping as best they can an eye on what it really is going on. And what's really going on is that this virus seems to be a biological weapon, right? And rather than, from the Cold War, this seems like something out of Agenda 21 or 3030 or New World Order, or what do you want to call it. But see, all this stuff is not what it seems to be. And Stanley Kubrick, one of my favorite, if not favorite, director of film. I mean, Lolita, Full Metal Jacket, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Clockwork Orange, and the other amazing movies he made. Shining. Uh, Doctor Strangelove. You really need to go see all those. And Stanley Kubrick was the only director who really could seem to be able to put out a movie that whoever corporation he was working for couldn't touch it. I mean, most movies are, the filmmaker has a vision. Hey, Jane, happy Valentine's Day. Yes. Sweetie, sweetie, love, 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 to you and all the cadre. And so Stanley Kubrick, um, you know, go watch his movie. So, especially if you do a little acid, it'll change your mind. So this, I've died a number of times, and so that's given me a different perspective on life. And pretty much, I was in a vehicle that flew off a 2,200-foot cliff, right? I mean, right? And what happened was the vehicle I was in flew over the cliff. We went through, the fence, didn't stop us from going off the cliff, and we went right over, and we went down. And instead of like going, like in the movies where you see the car go, fly, we went down, and about 20 feet or 10 feet, On the other side of the fence was an outstretch, and went, pow, and the vehicle just boom like this, right? And we stopped, and we're up, like this, right? The tires are here, and we're like this. We're like, don't move, don't move, don't move, right? And I had a big dog, and he was freaking out in the back, and it was my friend's van, and we were linemen, and so we had tons of boxes of heavy equipment and tools and stuff like that, and don't move, and all of a sudden, um, a box came loose and flew right by my head and smashed through the window, right? And then the dog really freaked out and was bouncing off all over everything. And the vehicle went, and we tumbled down, right? In slow motion. Boom, 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 because we didn't have the energy of, right? Now, if the vehicle had just flown out about 30 feet past um, the little outcropping, we would have, right, and blown up. But this thing, it just tumbled, tumbled, tumbled. And one of the first things to fall off was the gas tank. And that saved our lives because it blew up back there, right? And we were, so when we finally came to rest down at the bottom, we weren't burning alive. And when we landed, it was like I landed on the moon. And they were still landing on the moon. This is 1971. And when we landed, after all this cacophony, and my dog flew right by me when the car was, tipping up, he went, whoa! He was like ejected from the vehicle. And I saw him fly through the air, hit the ground, and take off. And he was a Rhodesian Ridgeback. And this dog was bred to fight lions. So he was pretty hardy and also fast. And so I just kind of watched him fly through the air and land and just take off. He was like a cartoon. You saw this little path of dust going behind him. And smash, crash, boom, bash, boom, bam, bada, boom, smash, crash. It went on forever, right? Because it was in slow motion and we weren't burning alive. And when I finally, and at some point I went unconscious in the smash, man, I just kind of, we were flipping around so many times, I just kind of lost it and went out. And when I came to, it was, a Econoline Ford van, and they had these bucket seats that were on a metal box that was welded to the floor of the van. And your safety belt was not attached to the van, it was attached to the seat, because that seat kind of stood alone. And when I came to, I was still buckled in my seat, and it had landed, like this. I woke up like this, right? Like looking around, and I was still in my seat, and it could have chopped my legs off, my feet off, but it didn't. And it could have been busted up. I was black and blue every inch of my body, but I didn't break anything, or it didn't have anything punctured. I wasn't internally bleeding. Blood wasn't coming out of my nose and eyeballs and ears. And anyway, I kind of came to, and I was like looking around, and dust, and things were still clinking and crashing and smashing, and I kind of looked around, and my friend, this is out in New Mexico, there aren't too many trees. He's up in a tree, right? And he's going, oh. I go, hey, you okay? And he goes, oh. And he kind of, wiggles free from the tree and slides down and on the ground. And he's like, oh, are you okay? He goes, you okay? I said, yeah, I hurt everywhere, but I think I'm okay. I'm talking, I'm not bleeding. I don't really, I hurt everywhere, but I don't hurt any specifically place. And anyway, he's like this, right? He kind of looks around for his pack of cigarettes and pulls out a cigarette that's like broken. And he's trying to start a lighter that's, it's a Zippo lighter. It's not doing it. Anyway, so he kind of crawls over to me, and he's like, trying to strangle me. And he goes, because I was driving the truck. He drove most of the way. We were about 10 miles to his place. And we went up this mountain before we went down in the valley where he lives. And it's, started to snow. and it was really cold. The desert's really cold, and we were, this kind of line. We were pulling a big truck that we had just purchased. In the New Mexico time was like the used car sale lot of everything military. There were depots everywhere where you could buy a gigantic one of those big military trucks, for $1,200. So anyway, he bought one of those, and we towed it and we used aircraft cable that we used at work to make a trailer hitch. So what happened was when we hit the ice, and I was driving, and I wasn't the best of drivers, and we hit this patch of ice going up the hill, and a big truck kind of swung out behind and past us and turned us around and slung us like a slingshot, and it ripped the back of the the bottom part of the back of the tunnel line where the gas tank was, and broke it, and shot us like a slingshot right through that fence and right up the cliff. And so we hit that thing and then tumbled down. Anyway, so he's trying to strangle me, but he didn't have the. He goes, "I hate you, I hate you." And then he goes, "I know it's not your fault. I hate you, I hate you. You ruined my life," because this truck was going to be his keystone of changing his life, his business, his everything. And we just destroyed everything. And he had driven the whole way, and we were almost there, and he was dead tired, so he stopped. He said, "You drive the last 10 miles, and that'll be fine." And so we went up this it's patch of ice, and whoop, and so that was like I was living through and I'd seen um, you know Stanley Kubrick's film, and that was like running through my mind as I was tumbling in slow motion down the hill, right? And I survived. Like I said, black and blue. It looked like someone had taken a baseball bat to me, for a good 10 minutes, and that guy too. And so, anyway, we crawled up the hill, and we're at the top, and we're like sitting by the side of the road, and this cop car comes flying by, and the truck was over there burning, you know. So this big acrid column of black smoke was going up, and it had swung on the ice after flinging us off the cliff. It had hit a big pile, big side of the mountain, and the gas tank of our truck was still attached to the big truck, and so it was burning, and it couldn't even, resurrect that. It was just burning, right, into totality. And we're sitting by the side of the road, all black and blue and beat up, and our clothes, a tussle. Anyways, cop car goes, and this out in the middle of the desert, good 100 miles in the middle of nowhere, and New Mexico. And he flies by and backs up. He looks at us. He goes, "You boys okay?" And we go, he goes, "Should I call an ambulance?" And the guy goes, "No, I just live about, can we give us a ride 10 miles down the road to where I live?" And he goes, "Yeah, you sure you're okay?" And he gets out. My friend, "You got a cigarette?" It's, "Oh, yeah, man." He takes out a cigarette, gets a cigarette. He gives me one. And, I'm like, "So, yeah, I'll smoke a cigarette too." Anyway, so we're talking, and he's like looking down. He's like a trail of what was left of the economy. He said, "Is that where you guys headed up?" "Yep, yep, yep." And he's like looking around, going, "Boy, you guys are lucky." Because there's nothing left of the van. The truck's on fire, and he's talking to us, and so he goes, "Well, I probably couldn't, get on the radio and talk to anybody. We're so far out in the middle of anywhere." Anyway, so he kind of sits down with us and starts talking to us. And he goes, "So, where did you guys actually, how he sat was his car, and there was nobody coming up and down the road. So he was like in the middle, his lights are going. And he sits in his car seat facing us, his legs on the road. And he's like right there. And he goes, "So, what happened? Da da da." And I say, "So, how did you even know to find us?" He goes, "Well, I was going on 421 going the other way, and I saw out in the desert a puff of smoke, a trail of smoke, dust. And I stopped and got my binoculars, and it was a dog running like faster than I could imagine a dog to run. And it was like flying, and he wasn't like stopping, he was just going across the desert. And I said, "Oh, that was my dog Frank. He flew out of the car." He goes, "Boy, that dog can run." I said, "Yeah, he's quick." He goes, "You're never going to see that dog again. I don't know where he's going to end up." And so, uh, yep, thank goodness I survived. And so, so we get in the car, and we he drives us back to my friend's ranch where his wife and kids are. And the kids are like all over the place, like all they eat is sugar, so they're like bouncing around. And the wife she's like smoking, and she goes, first, you guys, we come in looking terrible. So she gets up the first day, kid, and cleans all our boo boos, and we got, each got a glass of Jack Daniels, smoking like 3 cigarettes at once. And then the wife goes, "I told you that was a bad idea." And oh, they go off and have the most unbelievable argument. And the kids, the poor kids are just bouncing around and not even paying attention to their parents wanting to kill each other. And this guy smoking 4 cigarettes at once on the couch, you could hear the ice cubes clinking in my glass, and those two are screaming, and "I told you!" And all of a sudden, they start kissing, and off into the bedroom they go. And you hear the back of the bed hitting the wall, bang, 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 and the kids are giggling. And I say to the kids, "What's so funny?" Because, "Well, this always happens. Mommy and Daddy try to kill each other, and then they go have sex. That's how we got here." And I'm like, so this is 1971, right? Right around the time, maybe 72, when Nixon is being, um, you know, um, deposed, and I'm sitting there, shaking, and the cubes are going clink, 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 and I'm smoking 4 cigarettes at once, and my friend and his wife are having sex, and bang, bang, and the kids are giggling, and there is Jerry Ford getting sworn in as president, and his little speech is his little hook of his speech is, "I'm a Ford. I may not be a Lincoln, but I'm a Ford. You can trust me." And it's like, and that's when things just got weirder and weirder and weirder and weirder. And, I thought this couldn't get any weirder, but it did. It just kept getting weirder, right? And then I put it in perspective and realized, yeah, it's all the same, right? Same as it ever was. And that's where we are now. So we're looking at this, pretty amazing um, potential of, 3/4 of the human race being gone by next, I keep saying, so right now it's 10 months to the window of opportunity, right? We are at this window of opportunity, 10 months. So, we're looking at within 10 months, a third to a half of the human race is going to be gone. And all whole, supply chain of the world we live in is going to be gone, you know? The canary in the coal mine who's always getting everything delivered by Amazon, not going to be. No one's going to have a car. No one's going to have electricity. And I'm living out the place. In training of that, right? And there's nobody around me, so I'm not going to expose to too much. Though this winter we've had amazing flu, and I took my friend to the hospital, and it was in chaos. The flu was everywhere, and so much so that one of the counties closed the school, and they said, "If it doesn't get any better, we're not, we're gonna wait till fall to open the school again." I mean, who heard of that? And it's not even on. You watch the TV news. It's not even the main thing of TV news. So um, forget about how could someone that killed Kennedy, how could they keep that secret? Well, no one's even talking about that one county, the whole school system's closed down, and they furloughed the staff, so that's why I said mortality is the cousin to love's co-creation, because there's so much stuff that has been kept secret, right? Most of the flying saucers people see flying around are ours. You know, I remember, when I was, part of that alternative technology thing of when I was at the UN, um, and I was working on things and giving talks at the UN that people and having now they have these like conferences about disclosure in UFOs. Well, I was having those at the UN in 1983, and four and five, and I basically you know I didn't get thrown out, but I gave this speech about, hey, technology is 1,000 years ahead of where we are. And if this separation of the elite and everybody else keeps going, it's going to foster a pandemic, uh, either biological, intellectual, military, or economic. And that's where we are right now. We're in a pandemic of all the above, right? And I said it's going to, wipe out a third to three-quarters of the human race, and if we let it, we don't have to. We have all the technology to fix everything, to bring peace on Earth, and we live on a planet of abundance and prosperity, not one of scarcity, right? And limitation and war, right? War is just, a vehicle to keep. Anyway, I gave this speech, and the guy who was the head of the whole place kind of I was the keynote speaker. I was supposed to give this speech about technology and commerce and the new world order, and I didn't. I went 180 degrees the other way. I just kind of threw the papers up in the air, and I was up on the roster. I was part of the chosen one, but everyone had their $1,000 suit, meaning I had my Goodwill T-shirt and jeans, and and red sneakers, and long hair, and kind of and ketchup stains over here and mustard stains over there, and I was giving the keynote speech, and then what was his name? Beautiful, beautiful African man, just brilliant, like you couldn't believe. And him and a bunch of the other guys. Al is all right. We need him. We need Al here. So that's why I was there, and he gets up, just like slapping his leg, going, "That Al, he really understands his First Amendment rights." And then he says, "Little do most of you know, they don't exist." And he just laughed harder and harder, and kind of patted me on the back, like, "Good little boy." And I went to go sit down at the roster, and the security guy blocked my way and pointed to the steps where I had to go down and sit in the audience, right? And when that happened, and he's just laughing and going, "That Al," and then he goes like a light switch, blink, onto the New World Order. And then the thing about the UN was they always had really nice meals, right? So we after in this thing, they went on for a few hours, and then we break and we go you know, to lunch. And it's like a wedding reception, linen things and silver stuff and really good meals brought to you by waiters. You weren't like waiting online getting your cheeseburger. Anyway, I go to sit at the table I was assigned to, and my little card is gone. And like there's a little table over there, like at Thanksgiving where the kids are. I sit down on a rickety chair, and I have a TV dinner tray. And this guy comes up to me, and he looks like Santa Claus, right? He's got white hair, white beard, really nice suit, really nice shoes. Obviously, his shoes are so shined. It was obvious this guy's a military guy slash banker, right? So he goes, "That was a very interesting speech you gave, son." I said, "Thanks." He goes, "Can I sit and have lunch with you?" I said, "Sure. Go get yourself a TV dinner tray." So he sits down and he goes, "I'm George Christie." I go, "Were you part of the guys at JPL and also at the Rad Lab?" My friend He goes, yes, your friend, your mentor, Billy Kluver. Yes, he's a good friend of mine. Yeah, I got my Nobel Prize with him. Yeah. And I go, oh, he goes, I'm doing some interesting things, and I think we need a guy like you. And I go, oh, okay. Anyway, so this guy was the guy who started Intelsat. He's the guy who put up all the telecommunications satellites. He was like the what's his name? Who's the guy who's doing Tesla? He was like that, but he was the real deal. Elon Musk is another one of those poster boys. He comes from South Africa. And he's just a poster boy. I mean, just listen to him. He's a moron. I loved it when he was on the Joe Rogan show smoking pot. So the this guy sits. So we have lunch. He's sitting. And everyone's kind of looking at, wow, George is talking to Al. He's not sitting at the big table. He's sitting at the rackety chair over in the corner with a TV dinner tray. And so George goes, so here's my card. And he writes on the back of it, this is my private number. You call, I will answer. The other one, you'll get my secretary. But this is, pretty much any time of the day. you know. So he goes, "What are you doing this week coming? Is there any day you got free?" I go, well, what day is good for you?" Because me, I get a very flexible schedule. He goes, "Because I'm living in an abandoned building. I'm still, running my electric biz, but by that time I had turned it totally over to my girls, all my employees, and so because I was doing all this other stuff." So they were amazed that I would turn up, thriving electric business. Well, I trained them all to be great electricians. So I said, "Why do I need to burn around here? You know what to do. And you guys take most of the money. Just give me my cut." So I basically, no matter how hard I worked, no matter how much money that company made, I never made any more than like 50 grand. My best year was probably at 50, but I mean, I think millions of dollars going through this company, and it's getting to payroll and expenses and this and that. Anyway, so I said, as long as I get that, fine. You girls take, and they loved the fact that they were running it themselves, that they were in charge, because they were great. I trained them to do the good job, and my clientele liked them a lot, and they ran it better than I did. So and I'd still come in. They'd call me up. Hey, we got a problem with this. Can you take a look? And I would. At least a couple times a week, I would go in and say, okay, we do it this way, that way, put it out, and I'd still be the guy to make the first contact with a client and see what they wanted, but there were two other ladies who had been there long enough and would go with me to that. And they could do most of it, but the schmoozing part, I was still the smoozer guy. So anyway, and I had to be the poster boy, to make everyone comfortable, right? So anyway, when I was with George, I remember him because he had been in the military and he had been in the Navy, and that's when I realized the Navy was the premier um, um, arm of the military, right? They've been around the longest. The Army, they were still in a cavalry mode. I mean, they were still riding horses, the beginning of World War II, so they were, and the Air Force didn't exist. Anyway, the Navy was the premier technological thing, and they were the guys who did in the Philadelphia experiment, which is you know time travel and dimensional travel. And you used to hear in the 50s that, well, not just flying saucers, but cigar-shaped, flying objects. And what that was the Navy had, by the time World War II ended, our production thing was unbelievable. I mean, they had assembly lines where they were turning out, uh, bombers, one bomber an hour. B-24s and B-29s, that turning one of those out an hour. No way could Japan. Japan was a burning mess. Germany was a rubble. and we were bombing things. We dropped those atomic bombs just to see what they would do to human beings and to give Russia a heads up of, hey, we got this. But we gave Russia the atomic bomb so they could be the scary monster. They were our best buddy. They were our ally in World War II. They was the thing that blunted um, the Germans. We knew the Germans had atomic bombs. Actually, the atomic bomb that went over Hiroshima, not the plutonium bomb, but the uranium bomb was, you know, they painted it, when we got it, it had SWAT stickers on it. We painted it gray and put it in the bomb bay of the Enola Gay. So the Navy was the premier, and the Navy was all over. You know, General Groves was Army, but the technical people at Los Alamos were Navy. Because when I worked at Los Alamos, the Navy imprint was there big time. It was Navy gray, not Army green. So what they had, that supply chain, they were knocking out Liberty ships a day, submarines, they had more. I mean, we sank more Japanese tonnage with submarines than we did with aircraft. So we had a ton of submarines. So they, in the 50s, when they perfected anti gravity, they stuck them on submarines, and because submarines were built to, go underwater, be sealed tight. So they were the thing that they were producing and had the technology to go into space where there's a vacuum. And so that's why those cigar shaped, they were U.S. submarines with anti grav on it, right? So let's see what you guys have been saying here. Let's go. Do, 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 do. So what I'm saying about this potential um, of us, getting wiped out by this actually obviously genetically engineered bioweapon, is that it's going to be the springboard for the real. Okay, we got all this stuff because the powers that shouldn't be are why they haven't let it out is that they have like strangled the human spirit to such a degree in the last 150 years, not to mention the last 6,000 years. But they either have to kill everybody or do something extremely radical to allow the public to go, okay, okay, yeah, you did all this crappy shit and we're pissed off about that, but just save our lives and it's okay, you know. So that's the choice, and I keep saying opportunity. I've been talking about it for the last year. I haven't mentioned this is what it is because this was only one thing on my radar screen. It wasn't all of them. So I just kept saying, "Hey, this is the window of opportunity." And I started out in the desert. The 40 days and 40 nights. If you go back, like I said, guys, I have 1,000 of these shows, and they're all pretty interesting. They all have lots. I'm like. I don't, you know, I'm not egoist enough to say I'm Stanley Kubrick, but Stanley Kubrick, every one of his movies are like gems of metaphor. Especially The Shining. The Shining's got all this stuff in there. Like the kid. Stanley wanted to. Why could Stanley have these movies and no one touched? Because that was part of the deal. Because he did. He did the shooting of the moon landing in, you know, a studio someplace, right? And that's what 2001 was. 2000, all the technology he developed to do the moon landing, he used, um, you know, for 2001. And that's why that movie is still as brilliant as it is because he developed technology. Because this guy, he was a meticulous technician and an amazing artist, right? So he had this amazing connection of both of those. So, you know, I'm a photographer, right? A filmmaker. And so I know the only way you can take pictures is with light. And the only way light works is when it reflects off something. So when you have a vacuum, you're not going to, so people just see the grainy, I'm step from man. But NASA has a zillion Hasselblad photographs. The guys had their Hasselblads attached to their suits. Well, they couldn't even look down through you go, online and look at those photographs. They're all in focus. They didn't have autofocus. They had regular old Hasselblad with 2.25 film in it. And they couldn't look down and focus the camera. But so all these pictures are in focus. And not only that, they are composed. Like when I shoot a picture, I compose it. That's why my photography is pretty good. And, it's kind of running in my head, so I'm not thinking about it like a lot of people. It's like when people read, you can tell the people who are kind of slow is like when their lips are moving, right? Well, my lips used to move until I learned, the Evelyn Wood speed reading course. And so Kubrick made a deal. He was a guy they picked, and why they did this is that the Nazis had gotten to the moon in the 40s, right? And so they had built that thing out like you can't believe. There's probably a million. That scene in 2001 where the guys are out in space and the monoliths over here and over there is like the moon city, right? So that was there probably then when they made the movie. So when and why Kennedy, he made that speech, when we would just had Sputnik, they didn't even have people up in space. We're going to the moon, and by the end of this decade. Well, he knew that they were already there, and he had been, with Forrestal at the end of. He was still in the Navy, and at the end of the war, he went there with, it was just ended. They were still fighting in Japan, and he went with Forrestal and talked to all the Nazi scientists, and that's where Operation Paperclip. So, Kennedy saw all of this advanced technology the Nazis had, and he knew, that, and he was, in the Navy, and he was with Forrestal, so he knew about the Philadelphia experiment and all the time travel stuff and the dimensional stuff and the there by that time they had Tesla had 0 point energy. They knew all of this. In the 1890s they had 0 point energy. They didn't have to burn any coal, didn't have to burn any gas. We could have hopscotched into a new reality in the 1890s. That's what Tesla wanted. And when Morgan said, "Sorry, Nick, I own you, and we're not doing this. This is very interesting. That's why I paid for you to do Warden Cliffs, and now we're taking it down." They put it up, it worked. Okay, thank you very much. I'm sticking you in the Waldorf Astoria, and you can feed pigeons. And that's what Tesla. And every time they needed them, they kind of pulled them out, and they needed them for the Philadelphia experiment. They needed them for Manhattan Project. They needed them for a bunch of things, and they would just pull them out. But after the Colorado, his laboratory in Colorado Springs, he had no more freedom, right? So, and he died, and they didn't even keep him in the Waldorf Astoria anymore. They sent him to the New Yorker hotel, and that's where he died, and that's where Donald Trump's uh, uncle John was the first scientist. He went in there minutes after Tesla dies, and the FBI's there, and he and two FBI agents go in, and he's looking through all his papers, and he takes what he thinks is the important stuff, and they walk out, and that's when the FBI let the Russians in and the English in, and they're fighting like bitches in the, Tesla's. They haven't even taken Tesla's warm, cooling body out of, and people are stepping over Tesla, going, "Well, I want this, I want that." Blah, blah, blah. And and Donald Trump's uncle was the first guy to see it premiere. Before people started you know getting mayonnaise and ketchup on the stuff. So that's how weird the world is, right? And so this little, if you go and I've left tons of. We go on my playlist. There's tons of there are a number of people who really are following the virus very closely, and who have been able to suss that parts of it originated in Canada, and where I don't know if any of you have a retention span, but about a year and a half ago there was a little. If you were looking at the news like I look at it, there was a little kerfuffle in the west coast of Canada, Ottawa neck of the woods, where a big military biological lab had sent some stuff to China, to China's military, weaponized lab um, in Wahoo province. This lab is right like 3 blocks from where, patient zero was in that open air market, right? And right there, that little connection right there is like, And it seems like the government of China manufactured this biological weapon, um, but it was a number of component parts of this was given to them by this military lab in Canada, which, all of these labs are owned by the same people of the New World Order clan, right? The hidden hand. I don't like using acronyms that are, like New World Order, because it keeps bringing this image of, the violet lapdog, George H. So George H. He wasn't even, he was the son of a Russian spy who was um, a Tesla's, um, assistant. And the Russians, Joe Stalin, sent this guy in with the blessing of Hoover to Tesla, right? And this guy was a walking computer, and the Russians have a real, almost mystic knack with advanced physics, right? So you put those two guys together, and you got what you got from out of Tesla going into state and seeing these devices and building them in state, and then coming out, making a drawing, and giving it to his bench electrician like me, who was Grandpa Stoll, my mentor, and would make these devices. And so, and that's why when you see them, they seem like little bench toys. Even when you see the big generators in the Niagara Falls things, they look like toys, but they're gigantic, right? So anyway, his assistant was this Russian spy, a brilliant mathematician, and he had a son, right? And if you've ever seen the movie, not the movie, the children's books of George the Monkey, and his owner was the man in yellow with a big hat, that was the Russian spy. And George H. was, and Tesla used to call this, George H., you little monkey, because he was always all over the place. Now, if his assistant was stealing things, Tesla would have called him, get out. But because this kid kept sticking stuff in his pocket, and then his daddy would send him off to Joe Stalin. So that was George H. So George H. was, a deep state man from the point of him being 6 years old, right? And then he was given to Prescott Bush, who was a fascist, So all you guys got to do is, and this stuff is all in plain sight. It's like nothing's hidden, right? It's just the general public is so distracted by their new pair of shoes. Want to look at distraction. The poster child of distraction is the canary in a coal mine up there at the school there. He's going, what am I going to do? I'm going to, his parents are, giving him all the money he needs, and he's still going, how am I going to pay my bills? Oh, I don't want to work. Oh, I hate those. Oh, la, 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 la. That's the general public. La, 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 la. It's like that TV show, Mary Hartman. Go, Google that, see it, those shows, because it started out like molasses and ended up like right now. The guy who did that show was brilliant, because he was like Stanley Kubrick. He was given a metaphorical heads up to, hey kids, because it starts out, this woman's out there in the suburbs and everything's slow and blah blah blah, but her life just gets blah 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 blah, to the point that she's having affairs with everybody, and she's having her longest term affair is with this guy who's who is a fireman, and this guy is like really a downer because he's seeing all these people burned alive and dying, and he's always talking about that. And he's so tired between Mary Hartman screwing his brains out and him being on call all the time that he's tired. And towards the end, he just conks out, and his face goes into a big bowl of Cheerios where he drowns in the bowl of Cheerios. Just like it was almost verbatim of me dying in that bowl of spaghetti in 2014. And I watched that so religiously because I was contractor in New York. This is like '70s, and I didn't get my license quite yet, because I always used Grandpa Stoll's and Mike Stoll's license. I always put all of my jobs on their book, and it was so much easier because they ran a tight ship of a business, and I just went out and got them business and did jobs and was grooving on the fact that I could do anything, electrically. I could put meters in any place, anywhere, anytime. I could. So I built these, wired these discotheques, because other contractors would start. They were all done by the mob, and they started out and they would smash the holes, put do all the hard work, run the pipe, pull the wires. But when it came time to what I do best, and that's called terminating, putting the wire into the receptacle or the switch or the controller or whatever. Yeah, forget it. They couldn't make it work. And if the lights aren't blinking in a disco, that's not a disco. So that was my thing. So not only that, they would have so many different electricians. This guy would start out, put in the pipe and blah blah blah. Then one of the problems of the electrician is that they're the top of the heat of the food chain of the contracting scene, and they, start a job, get a quarter done, and they get paid in quarters. And once they get their third, they're already on to other jobs. So that one falls back. So they never finish that job. I never finished that job. But they got, they're living on the 2/3. And so they start as many jobs as they can to get those 2/3, and they let everything slide. So most discos, because they were complicated and people didn't really understand them. And, I was a theatrical lighting designer, I was a film lighting designer. So I understand the effect of light, right? And so I would be called in, and 90% of the work would be done, but nothing worked. And I had the stalls, the guy who had the first master electrician license, a guy everyone owed a favor to, they would, be my license, right? They would be on the book, right? And so I could get, and if it was done right and worked and was safe, it would, the city would forget about all the other, you know, paperwork that would, torpedo almost any other job. But because I had these guys behind me, I could get anything passed, right? And the insurance guys would sign on, and so in the '70s and early '80s, until I got my license, I think in '84, and and everyone was going, "Why are you getting your license?" The lady at the licensing bureau in New York, "When are you going to get your license? Grandpa Soul ain't going to live forever. You better." And that's why I did. In '84, before Grandpa Soul kicked off, I got my license because it made him proud. I did it mostly at him. And I had done this stuff for so long. I knew that book by heart. So when I took my test, I got a 98 on it. And it was very strange because um, right when I got my license, New York, some politicians trying to make a name for him. And, so everything in New York City was as corrupt as you could get. Everything was on the arm. And, most guys bought their license. And so I got my license, and I was in my 30s. Most guys didn't get their license until, they were 40 something, because you had to have 16 years of consecutive W-2 points. That was to keep the riffraff out, right? And the stalls, even when I went to school, when I wasn't around, when I was living in foreign lands, they kept me on the payroll so I could have those 16 years. And you had to have 4 years in the union. And that's why Grandpa Stahl, who started the IBEW, put me in the union, because he did all these things with me so I could get my license. So before he died, I got my license. So I took the test, and that test was pretty complicated. not only was it a written test, but you had they gave you a list of materials, so you had to come with Kindorf and Greenfield and pipe and connectors, and I mean they supplied the starters and the motors and stuff, but you had to wire starters. You had to wire a whole system, and you only had like 2 hours to do it. You had to cut. You had to have your tools with you. You had and there was nothing electric. Everything was you know. So I scored. I got a 98. Between the written test and the mechanical test, I got a 98. And the 2 points I got, they just never gave anybody. Those were like mathematical points. They just didn't give anybody. And so I thought, good. And a week later, I got this thing. Said, okay, here's your temporary thing. You got a 98. Very good. Then I got a couple of days later, the FBI guy showed up. Who paid? Who cheated? Blah blah blah. I said, what? No, right? So well, you're gonna have to take the written test over again. And they said, the guy watched you do the mechanical part, and you were really good at that. So, but you're gonna take the written part, and we're gonna be watching, and we're gonna, take stuff from all the different tests because you used to school. This guy taught you how to take the test. He didn't give you the answers, but he knew all the answers from all of the other tests for the last 20 years. And so he was like, he was like, could tell what what questions were going to be on there. So he would study those. So I take the test again, and I get 100. When I'm taking it, so they make me take it again. And when I take it again, there's this other young guy um, taking the test with me, just him and me in the city. I think the third time I went, I had to go in the federal building right there, the big thing that looks like the monolith downtown. Anyway, so I go in there, and there's Michael, right? Michael Curtin, and he was the youngest guy. He was about 27, and they couldn't believe he had 16. His dad was an electrician, so of course, right? And so he and I got so I took it twice. He took it. I mean, I took it 3 times. He took it twice. Anyway, we looked at it. We got there, sat there before the guys. They entered. We went in the thing where I'm here to take this test. They sent us up to a certain. We went to that room, and we were there for, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. And the guy said, hey, the room across, if you want to get a donut and coffee, you guys can go over there. We're still waiting for the guys who are bringing you your test. So go, you want to smoke cigarettes, go ahead. So Michael smoked, and he was like nervous. I said, so man, you're pretty young. So I'm like 33 or 32 or 34 or however old I was. So 84. So I was 34. So and he's 27. And so he's, you did all those discos. I said, yeah. So I said, well, I'm from Queens. And my dad, I've been doing electrical work since I was 2. And I said, oh, yeah, I did it since I was 9. So we started comparing. And he was a painter. He was a writer. He was, I really don't want to be an electrician, but my dad, it's a good way. And I like doing it. I said, you're kind of like me. So we instantly bonded. And it mellowed him out. He stopped jiggling. And I said, this is nothing. I mean, you and I, obviously, are, because he was a local 3 too, and and he's, so he knew about Grandpa Stahl, the whole thing. So anyway, and so I was a Manhattan guy. He was a Queens boy. So he was more familiar with. He told me stories of Donald Trump's father. He said those guys, that part of Queens is like, I'm Irish, and we're like almost like black people, right? And the Irish were, and that's the whole thing about America. America has been a racist place since day one, and who's ever the last off the boat is the lowest on the rung. Black man's like on the third rung, and as white as your skin is how fast you can go up the rungs, and how well you serve, the powers that shouldn't be. So anyway, we took the test and we became fast friends. And we started, so I was involved in collaborative artist projects and a whole bunch of, kitchen and a bunch of things. And he really dug that. He wanted to be so he got and my sharp and he was a sharp guy. And so we did. He and I did the along with Beth Lapidus and her roommate and a few other people. We did the Armory show. Our version of the Armory show. It was called the Brooklyn. It was a depot. It was every bomb, bullet, and tank that went to World War II went through that building, and it was designed to facilitate taking stuff off of trains and putting them on Liberty boats, and that's where container ships were invented. The Terminal Show. That's what it's. If you go Google the Terminal Show, so that was like Beth Lapidus, her roommate Michael's, and my idea, right? And we did that show. And it's a big success, right? Because there was an article saying, Soho had become, this big whoop-de-doo thing, and all the artists, that was the Mecca, they were coming, and all these people were coming out of art school, and there was like 100,000 artists showing up in New York every year, and just a handful of galleries. So we did an art show. I read this article in the Wall Street Journal that said there were, 100,000 artists that want to have an art show. They can't get any exposure. Like Keith Haring was a buddy of mine who did this. He couldn't. He was great. Interesting artist of his. He had his own style, kind of like Basquiat, and he could get no exposure. That's why we started collaborative artist projects to assist artists to get some kind of support and get exposure and get into the flow. So what he used to do was, on the subways, all the stations are tiled, so they can just come in and hose them down, right? And they have these places where they put posters for advertisements, right? And they make them look like you're at an art gallery. They have, a tiled frame, right? And when there's not an ad in that space, they put black paper there, right? So it's just a black space with a frame around it, right? And so Keith and I, we did all this kind of crazy art in the subways, right? Because thousands of people are going through. I got this banding tool, and I would make these sculptures with Alan Sarrett, and we would band them onto the steel columns in the stations. They're easy to take off. You just clip the band and they'd fall off. But your average person wouldn't know to just take a metal clipper and snip the bands and it would fall off. But and so we did things that you couldn't get arrested for destroying public property, because everything we did was like, just very surface. You could cut it, take it away. Didn't hurt anything, right? So we would get on the subway train with like big suitcases of stuff, and like it would stop, and we do it at 3 a.m. And back in the day, the subways were pretty, the subway on the F line would come every so often. Even late at night, you had a 5-minute, period of what the schedule. You go to the little box, I have a subway schedule of times, and they would give it to you. So we would get on the train. One of us would stay in the train and put our foot in the door. So they'd get out, and we were like, the commando crew, and we'd go in, and we'd take no more than 5 minutes to do this. And one of us would stand in the door and put our foot in it, and unless the door is closed, the train ain't taking off. And if you could do it in 5 minutes, it wouldn't piss them off too much, right? And the train normally stayed in the station for 5 minutes. So I'd have or somebody would have their foot in the door for no more than 30 or 40. So, okay, it's time to go. And because we go bing bong, and as soon as and then about 10 seconds after it bing bongs, the doors would close. But if your foot was in the door, it wouldn't close, so they couldn't close the doors. So you hear bing bong, and then the door would try to close. Bing bong, bing bong, bing bong, bing 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 bing. And when it started bing 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 bing, that's when you knew you had to jump on the train. So, but pretty much we would get these things up before the first bing bong. And so Keith had white chalk. He would go to that black piece of paper and go and draw these crazy things like cows having sex with flying saucers and just the craziest kind of imagery you could conceive of. Go Google Keith Haring, right? So, and we did that for about a year, and thousands of hundreds of thousands, millions of people saw this stuff every day, and it started to catch attention in the New York Post. What is this stuff? Who's doing this? Who's the mystery people? Right? What are they? Are they criminals? What's going on? Is this an advertising? So that TV shows, Channel 4, what's going on here? So basically, both Fallon and Keith at the height of what is going on is they basically called up the newspaper and the cops saying, "Listen, you want to capture this guy? He's going to be at this station at such and such a time," and because we had this wool, and so the TV guys and newspaper guys, the cops were there. The train would roll in. Keith would stroll over to the black thing and the cops would grab him. They take him away, and he get like mugged for the pictures and be interviewed. Bingo. Within the time that he got arrested, within a year, he was a millionaire, right? And within the time that Alan got caught, he was a millionaire, right? And so that's when Banksy, years later, guys like Banksy and there are a few other people who did the same thing. They just, that was just an extension of Andy Warhol, and I had worked for Andy Warhol, so that's what's going on with this this viral pandemic. It's just another version of Andy Warhol. This is just going to be somebody's 15 minutes of fame. Okay, let's see what you guys have been saying here. Let's see. Happy Valentine's Day. Yes, happy Valentine's Day to everyone. Thank goodness you survived. Yep, I survived. Hey, Graham. How you doing, Jane? Let's see, Graham. CPI down 10% a year. Yeah. Less $4 power. Yep. Yeah, our economics is like totally, just a window dressing. Going to be very hard year end. Yeah, baby. Why do you think I'm living out in the middle of nowhere? Right? Let's see. That's the stuff we need to hear. Prepare for a slaughter. But the thing is, it's not doesn't have to be the slaughter. It really doesn't. Right? I actually think it's a bunch of folks, because if they were to make disclosure and bring out the Tesla technology, you'd walk through a little, and you would it would sieve out every kind of little biological thing in your body that shouldn't be there. Going to be very hard. Hello, Jane. That's the stuff we need. We've been tested with viruses. Don't blame the Chinese. Yep. Yeah, the poor Chinese, they always get hooked, Hello. Because, Chinese, they have anything to do with this. Because, the other thing about this virus, it seems like it has been, because when you engineer something, you can engineer it to just affect one type of people, one cohort. And it seems like the cohort is Asian folk, right? See you on the dark side of the moon. Yep. Yep. About oil. Thank you. Anglo English oil. That was the Queen and Mr. Rockefeller. Is there AI watching? Yeah. On this show, man, AI is the person show. As soon as I go on, bing, there's one person and one like. Right away. Bang. Like within 1 minute, right? So, yep. I don't know if I want to be POTUS. I don't have the ego for it. I've been in the room before. They want to give me a job to assist. I'm always great to be the guy in the background. And I don't need. Did you ever see the movie Wag the Dog? And Robert De Niro's this. He's like the Stanley Kubrick character. His name was Stanley, And you know, after he does this fake film to get into war and do all this stuff politically, they're in this room and he goes, "Wow, this is the best work I've ever done, and no one's ever going to know." And he just keeps moaning his ego about, "Oh, no one's going to know. No one's going to." The guy goes, "Well, we're paying you a lot of money, and you're going to be able to make any other movie you want." But he goes, "I'll never be able to do anything this great. Oh, this is my work. Oh, and I should, and next scene you see is Stanley's floating in the swimming pool. So I know." And I, basically, I'm not even wired to want to be, oh, like, Canary says, I worked 40 years. What has he really done? I worked 40 years to be famous and rich, and what's going on? Well, his parents are giving him thousands a week, so he's living in an amazing house. He should really, just be happy. He should go out there and talk to the squirrels. He's got such a great place. I mean, that used to be, I mean, I had a neighbor down below, who, he was just right over there, Jeff. He was a musician. He would pick girls up at his gigs and would take them there. I mean, he was, every week he had 5 different women, right? And he would have parties off the hook. And I would have nice artistic potluck dinners where there'd be 10, 15, 20 people. He would have raves down in his, so I only had to walk, down, a little up place. And the first, when I was there, and the first one he did when I was there, it was a little distracting because the people just came up and parked. Our driveway is like 2 miles long, and they would just park on it, so you couldn't get out. If anyone really got hurt, they'd be dead. So that but when he did the second one, there was a big tennis court. I said, have everyone park there so people can get up and down. Yeah, good idea. So he did. So after that, it was not so bad, but it was pretty amazing. I remember one time, I would go to these things, and they were great for the first 2 hours. I remember playing music, a big bonfire, all these pretty girls, lots of everything that you ever want, and basically, I would go and start talking to people, and that would be interesting. But within 4 or 5 hours, everyone was so stoned and drunk and tripping that you couldn't have a cohesive conversation with anybody. And what was good about this was, so I'd be there, and when it got to that time, and people would be unconscious, and people would take indelible uh, magic markers and draw up penises on their foreheads or, in their mouth. And this was a bit too much. I remember this one guy who was tripping and chopping wood, and he was like, was a one of those fireman axes with a thing on either end, and he whacked himself right in his head with the other sharp end of the thing, and it stuck in there, and he went right off the cliff of the back of Jeff's neighbor. Jeff and I were sitting there puffing and with a beer and puffing, and the guys were playing music, and he's chopping away, and wacko, and you see him like, "Ew," and Jeff goes timber, and the guy falls right off, and blah, blah, he's down about 100 yards, and the thing's still stuck in his head. And I go, should we go down and help him because I'm too fucked up to go do that. So I said, well, I'm going to bed. So I would leave. But the one, by the time it got that way, there would be a few people who weren't that stoned, weren't that drunk, wanted to talk about art or aesthetics. And I said, oh, why don't we come up to my little fire pit, and we grab a couple bottles of wine and a couple of, you know, stuff to smoke and go up there and have a nice time. And by that time, um, the cute girl or the cute girls who didn't have a place to stay, and the other people would mosey on back to the party, and that was my filtering thing. So Jeff did everything. He was he was like the love boat. He was the curator of the party, and I just came and visited and partaked, and that's how I am. I like to partake and I like to serve. I really, the thing that gives me the greatest pleasure is that I like to serve. And the Canary's biggest, how come you do all this stuff? You never get paid. Why do you're doing it to get at me, aren't you? It's like, really? Come on now. I like it because, one of the, things you should go see is on John Birmingham's channel, if he still even has it up, is I was doing this thing. I helped start a thing in the black community. I was just the one lone. When they had this meeting, a friend of mine said, "You should go hang out with these guys," and it was called Community Cultivators. The cops had shot a kid, and the town was about to blow up. And this one guy stood up. He ran the barbershop. You always see these movies about black barbershop. Well, that was this guy. And he went out there in the crowd when they had the pitchforks and the burning torches and, no, we're not going to burn our neighborhoods down. Everybody go home. Let's go to, on Tuesday, the city councils every Tuesday or third Tuesday or how many Tuesdays they'd have. And he had about, 300 people at the city council meeting. And they weren't with they would said, okay, we're not taking this anymore, right? And that's when a number of the grown-ups in city government said, okay, and sat down with that community and worked out things to make it better. And out of that came community cultivators. And the first thing they did, about 6 months later from that event, was that they had a jobs fair, because that was the biggest problem. Everybody was in super poverty because there were no jobs. The railroad used to be the ubiquitous jobs in Roanoke, and then they left, and then even poor and black people couldn't find a job. So we got 100 jobs, from Kroger's and Coca-Cola and you name it. We went out and found that, and then we had a jobs fair, and most jobs fair happen on the weekend. Well, none of the employers could get their employees to go to the jobs fair to man the table, and nobody who wanted a job would want to, besmirch their weekend time. But so the one thing I made sure it happened at this job fair, that was on a Friday, period, Friday, right? And they, should we, when are we going to do it? And I said, well, we need to do this before it gets really hot. So we did it in June, right? So just before it really got hot, we had it on a Friday. We advertised it really well. We had about, 500 people show up, and we got 100 people a job. They got a job on Friday. They went to work on Monday. And I made sure that we documented everything. I got everyone's names and numbers, and I followed those folks, through their, a year, seeing who's kept the job, why they kept the job, how they did that. And I wanted to use that first event and do more of them, and build a database to teach people how to get a job and how to keep a job, right? And that was going to be the salient uh, big thing of uh, of this organization, that we'd be, because we got so much press that we did this, that this handful of folk did this, and it was 5 black guys and me, and there were like 7 black women, but they were like sitting back there, and I kept saying, "The sister, hey sisters, come on, be part of this, be part of the." Oh no, it's they were taking the notes, and anyway, so and also they're back there going, "Ah, those guys," so and this was the Hidden Hands way of keeping organizations like this down, you know. So I was the unexpected consequence, and this is when I was really right at. I didn't, I died in the plate spaghetti. I got really sick, got sick, 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 sick. The doctors took all my money, so now I was sick and poor. So I had to, instead of depending on the doc, I got stuck up on the mountaintop, and all I had to eat was onions and oatmeal, and that's what saved my life. I lost 100 pounds in about 3 months, and then spring came, and I was looking for something to do, and um, a friend of mine said, who is a really great policeman. Most police are just basically mercs for the rich to keep everyone down, right? Pretty much, or that's what our judge. People are going on about the Justice Department about the carrot head getting his buddy off by having bar boy, you know, bend the rules. Well, buddy, if you're black or poor, the Justice Department sucks, and has been that way. I mean, we have not had municipal police departments, except for the last 100 years. We had things like Tammany Hall. People think, oh, it's so corrupt. Oh, it's the end of civilization as we know it. No, you know, go look at Tammany Hall. Look at what the politics look. Look what happened to the American Indians. You want to look at genocide? That's where the Nazis got their idea for the final solution. What we did with the American Indians. So go read Howard Zinn. And again, all of this stuff. Most people read Howard Zinn and go, I never knew, and then they become religiously a zealot for Zinn, right? No, Zen is just another grain of salt, you know, and so and it's just speeding up. It's like how they animated before movies. They had these things you put a nickel in and you do the thing, and these cards would flip, 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 right? Well, that's what's going on, and I realized this is what's going on in real time in our illusion of the linear experience is that when I was in Australia and I was, traveling with Donna, and I got this gig to go to hang with these Aborigines, right, to do an ethnography on them, so the government could use it. See, we're not as racist and genocidal as everyone thinks we are, so let us have the Olympics, because they wanted to have the Olympics, and everyone, I don't know about you guys. So it's. Jack the Ripper's still there, and you look at the statistics. Jack the Ripper is still there. He's knocking off Aboriginal women like you can't believe. So, anyway, the government, instead of giving me a car and some money, they just gave me a bus ticket, and I went from the capital to Sydney to we were kind of living in Sydney at the time, so we kind of went from Sydney to Melbourne, and that was our base. Of my buddy was. Neil was in Melbourne, and then to Adelaide, and then Perth, and then up the backside, to all these little things. We went through, and you get on this bus, right, and there'd be all these people, and you'd be going this route. And there's only one route, this circular route along the coast, and it was Greyhound, and it was owned by Reginald Ansett, who owned everything transportation, just like Rupert Murdoch owned everything in news and media. And I had a buddy who would start little newspapers in these little towns, and Rupert Murdoch would buy them out, and that was his revenue stream. Was he'd start an interesting magazine or a zine or a newspaper in a little town of 1,500 or 4,000 or whatever, and Rupert Murdoch would give him, $100,000 for that, because Rupert Murdoch wanted to own everything of media in Australia. And that's how Australia rolls. There's a handful of these guys. There's this place in Melbourne, this club that's from the Gilded Age. It's before the mud flood. And the mud flood happened in Australia too. And there's this line of mud, that the first floor, outside covered in mud, inside of the lobby, there's this line across, the mahogany. That was like a religious thing for them. And the other truly interesting thing was they had objects. The Gilded Age had technology that was above what we had. Meaning Tesla couldn't take his technology out to and revolutionize the world and give it to the average man. But Morgan let his buddies have it. Like you go to in Asheville, the big house, Biltmore House, and I did an ethnography on that place with this woman who was like knew everything about furniture and architecture, and I just took the pictures. This other person digitized everything and made a database so the government could put everything back the way it was after these morons had basically destroyed the Biltmore House. It was like the Astor Biltmore family de-evolved. They kept marrying into the folks who there, and they were spitting tobacco on the floor. And anyway, so, and I'm not that far above that level of monkeydom myself. So, that was this building in Australia. And I was taken in there once because I was like, wow, you're a cool guy. Everyone in Australia hated Americans, but deeply wanted to be one. And so when I cruised in there and I built this disco for this moron, who again was trying to own everything nightclubish and theaterish, and he was scum. He was like, who's the guy who's getting sued for sexual, the movie guy. He looked just like him. They all look like that. You're looking at people who do stuff that they kind of. It's like Mr. Potato Head. There's only so many ways of looking and being. So let's see. Hit that big thumb, right? Yes. Come on, more. There's only 2 thumbs up. There's only 3 people watching. Come on, more thumbs up. More subscribers. More, more, more. It's going to be the dead end of our civilization. I'm more about, I love the cadre because it's quality rather than quantity. Let's see. PRISM. I have no idea what that means. Graham. True that can see everything. Well, that's why owls have big eyes. It's one thing to see everything. We all see everything. It's when you can connect the dots. That's the interesting thing. Yeah. And you can tell how I think and do is just because my stream of consciousness little live chats, that's what this is. When you go, that's why I keep telling you, guys, you should go back and watch, the other 1,000, right? Because if you watch them and kind of, and you don't have to watch it from beginning to end, just that's why they have that nice little red bar that goes the thing that you can put your cursor on, and you can see the little picture, right? And you can stop and think, well, that's interesting. And you look at that. Oh, okay. And so that's, if you go back, there's a real stream of that all these dots, I'm leaving like cookie crumbs, right? Cookies. And so, let's see, I'm starting to get hungry. What time is it? Oh, 8:45. I've been doing this now for an hour and 21 minutes. So I started almost 6 something. So it's not raining. There's actually blue sky. When I started, it was dark, and now it's sunny. Not sunny, but bright. And so, mortality is connected to the love's co-creation. Mortality gives us the great jump forwards in our limited moron boy history of his story is coming. We're going to have we're in this new age, the Aquarian age, right? We went through, we're no longer in the Piscean age. That was 25,000 years of getting what you want through violence. Aquarian age is understanding what you need through enlightenment. Well, we got all these morons, all these pinheads who are still, Piscean age folk, Mr. Barr, Mr. Carrot Head, Mikey, what's his name? Who's our Secretary of Pompeo? Now that guy, him and Mikey are scary, and Barr, because they are so locked into their, Barr is a Catholic, and he is like so uber Catholic, and he's like the nun with the ruler, right? Or the Jesuit priest who wants to hit you with a 2x4 or a machine gun, and Mikey is whoa, he looks so much like Donald Sutherland. He's like straight out of central casting for the Hunger Games, and that's what these morons are trying to go for, is to create a Hunger Games scenario, right? And that's what this plague is going to manifest, and I don't think we're going to have a presidential election. That's why we have this Democratic scrum or cluster frack, because Bernie should have won the frigging DNC basically stole the Bernie is like the Charlie Brown, and the DNC is like Lucy. He goes to kick the football, DNC, and so he went along with it. He should have really raised, hey, this is what happened. He's a curmudgeonly old guy. He could have done that very good. Hey, of all the politicians, he's the only one who would stop his car and help someone if they were hurt on the side of the road. But he would then say, you know what, you need health care. You're not taking care of you. He would berate them while he was trying to help them. Me, I just try and tell you a story. I don't berate you, right? I just tell you a story. Uh, to that. Only two made. Yep. Hey, Lena. Good to see you, girl. Tesla was the best. Took all the paperwork. Yep. He was an amazing mind. He was amazing everything. Mind, spirit, soul, you name it. Caps. Yeah. He's like, trying to be emphatic, Lena. Yeah. You guys, I love you guys. Big letters. He's here for me to see. He's here for me to see. Oh, I love you, Lena. Not the best speller. You know, go read my writing, at xratted.blogspot, right? And basically, I'm a wordsmith. I'm a writer, and I have what is spelling? It's a spell. After the fall of the Tower of Babel, we were everybody, all the hominins were telepathic. People, oh, I think I'm psychic. No, we were telepathic. We could all read. That's why we didn't have wars. We didn't cheat. We shared everything because we felt everyone's feelings. It's kind of hard to. It's easy if you're, are not telepathic. You're not feeling what that guy who's got sores all over him and is in the clothes that he hasn't washed in 2 years and hasn't taken a shower. I mean, last year I didn't take a shower for 7 months, and my body was healthier than it is now. I'm taking care of this friend of mine who's sick, and I'm not getting sick, but I'm not as healthy as I was because I take a shower almost every day because I just love. He's got great water pressure. It's really hot. I can stay in there, and every kind of ache. And I wake up. I'm in amazing pain. I have to meditate for 15, 20 minutes, and then I have to get up and walk around, and then my blood's flowing, I'm good. Then I go in that shower, and it's like, oh, yeah. Ooh, because everything I broke, everything I hurt, I told you the story about my car falling down the cliff. Um, every boo-boo I had, I still feel you younger folks, as time goes by, everything, I broke my feet, both my feet and my toes. My Aquarians, our ankles, our feet, are our weakest part of our body, the thing that's supposed to support us. Anyway, that's why we're supposed to be light. So when I got to be 400 and something pounds, so my feet always hurt. And when you have diabetes, your feet always hurt, right? So, but I've got myself to a healthy place where I'm not going to die, right? But that doesn't mean I'm like what I was at 27. No, sorry. So, but when you get old, there's a good thing about being old. You have experience, and you can realize what that moment in your life. And that's why today's, you know, story is mortality, the cousin of love's co-creation, because that's where we get inspiration from that understand. When you're young, you don't even think, I did so much, like I, drove a car off a cliff and didn't die, pretty much, then I did die a few times and I came back. So, I'm never dying. Well, that's not true. My mortality is like right in front of me, right? So that's why I started this channel. That's why I keep saying, you guys need to go back because every show leads to the next show. They're all interconnected. You want to know, people, how do I know about the mystic world? Well, go watch all these shows and it'll put you in a mystic state. And again, I'm telling you guys, I'm not going to be here forever. So you better start putting that stuff on CD-ROM, on thumb drives, on your hard drive, and watch it some more because then it needs to be here and here because soon this is going to go away. Meaning my electric is so I'm on it, nickel by nickel, and they turn it off, because I have a smart meter, so they turn it on and off, on and off, on and off. So I know what it's like not to have electricity. And then when I just use the scant, smallest, they keep saying, why don't you use, do you live there? And I said, come on, you see, I'm using, but you use less electricity, in our database, since everyone's on the computer, you're using less than, the 250,000 people that are in our system. How do you do that? And I said, well, I only use it when I need it. They said, you don't have a refrigerator? So well, it's winter. I put it out in a cold box. That's what the milkman used to do. And they're kind of going scratching their head. And I said, and I don't eat much. I buy the food I'm going to eat for that week, and I eat it. And food can be fine out and about. It doesn't have to be refrigerated. And most people keep in their refrigerator for a month, and then it no matter how long you keep in a refrigerator, it's going to wilt. So I just eat it, right? And I have one pot. I just keep cooking, adding stuff, and that's how they did it in the old days. How my grandma did it, right? She lived to be 100. So what else are we saying there? Not the best speller, right? So my writing, right? So I misspell everything because when I started to be a really good writer, and people would say, you write pretty good, and then I being high school and college. But I remember in 8th grade, I had this terrible anal retentive. She looked like Nurse Ratched. All these anal retentive people in your life, all of them look like Nurse Ratched, or the Wicked Witch in the Dorothy Wizard of Oz. And so I I wrote this story in 8th grade, and it wasn't grammar class, it wasn't English class, it was creative writing. And I wrote a story about, in the near future, everything would be owned by one corporation. Now, Walmart's didn't, the biggest thing was Sears, and it would be, and I called it Sears World, and that everything was owned by Sears, and everyone had a number. You weren't you didn't have a name. You had a number, and you had to pay for your air to breathe and water to drink. And there were bars where you went in, you paid a cover charge just to breathe oxygen, not air, but oxygen. And this was, 8th grade, 1964, right? Anyway, so I misspelled specific words so they would get your attention, right? And I misspelled little words like can't and who and war and but big words I spelled correctly, right? And grammar, I ran whole sentences together, whole paragraphs together, no punctuation. Sometimes I put all the words together. And she gave me an F, right? She goes, and I said, why did I get an F? And she goes, well, you wrote about how we'd have to pay for our air, and there'd be bars where you paid for oxygen, and water cost money. It came in bottles. I said, everyone knows you just have to turn on the top, and there's always great water. What you wrote made no sense. It never's going to happen. I wrote that in 1964. This is never going to happen. Now, I by that time I'd gone to Europe and saw that they had Perrier in bottles, and that was water. And they had soda in America. That was water with artificial coloring and flavoring. Anyway, and I tried to be logical with her, and your spelling, it's atrocious. I said, what do you mean? I spelled all the big words right. And she was like, and she goes, and you ran sentences together, and you didn't have paragraphs, and I got an F. And I took it, to the principal and said, what about this? And she goes, oh yeah, that lady, Miss McGillicuddy. And then he starts laughing out loud. He goes, you did this on purpose to piss this woman off. And I said, no, I just wanted to break her spell on the language. And he laughed even harder. And he goes, Al, don't worry about it. I said, I'm not worrying. I'm just, he goes, well, why'd you come with me? What, you want an A or something? I said, yeah, this is the best, you know, because we all had to read our stories out to the class, right? And this is when I learned not, I mean, I wasn't stuttering that bad by that time, but I really got into being a theatrical orator, you know, in eighth grade. You know, by third grade, I'd gotten over stuttering, right? Because I had a clan, I had a crew, you know, I had a cadre. We all cared about each other. Girls really liked me, and I was their friend. I was their only friend. I was the one person that these girls would like to talk to because they could be themselves. They didn't have to watch out for the mean girl, or the pretty girls, or the athletic girls, or the boys. You know, there was one guy who appreciated them and saw them as a human being, right? And boy, that's guys. Here's a tip: treat girls like human beings, and they'll like you, right? So I always say, when I move into a new crowd, the first crowd that really, when I moved to that school, I had the first group of friends had were these four girls and Hoagland. The first day he showed up, can I have lunch with you? He'd talk like Ralph on The Simpsons, and he wore a suit. He had a vest and a suit. This guy was dressed. His shoes were shined, and I knew about shined shoes. Oh, look at that! This guy's he's got it together. So I said, sure. And so we're eating, and we both had bad lunch. The other guys had the tray food. And, he had a really nice cheese and ham sandwich. And I had a, you know, peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And so I had the same sandwich for, 3 years when I went to that grammar school. Anyway, that's all my mom and dad could manage to put in a bag, that and a banana. And so, but my father always made us oatmeal, you know. I started the day off with oatmeal, and on Fridays an egg in the oatmeal. So I'm sitting there at the cafeteria, and JP goes, "You want to see my gun?" And I go, "Yeah, sure." And he takes out a Walter PBK. He's got the holster that 007 has, and he's got the gun that 007 has. It's a Walter PBK. He puts it down in front of me, and I look at it and go, and it's a weight, and it's not a plastic gun. It's like a gun. And then he takes it apart, like bing, 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 boom, takes it apart and puts up the boom, puts a piece there, boom. He's like, Full Metal Jacket, and we're in a cafeteria. There's teachers, there's people. He's got a gun on. It's only two of us at the table. He's wearing a suit. I look like a hobo, you know. And he takes his gun apart and looks at it, and he goes, the thing about this gun is I never put up, I never have it with a bullet in the chamber or, you know, it loaded, right? He goes, in this bucket, I keep my clips and in harness, I have my gun. And, he goes, I can throw this clip in there in a second if I need it. But it's a stupid person who carries a loaded gun on their body. So he puts it away. No one notices. He's had the gun out in pieces in front of him for a good 10 minutes. Now, he has when he put it out, he put it right in front of me. And I'm like, oh, that's a real gun. Anyway, that was my first friend, right? And, you want to come home? And I went home, and there his mother. She was like Donna Reed, beautiful house, very middle class, and tchotchkes everywhere. And she's wearing an apron and a dress. And, she's baking, and she's got all kinds of food stacked everywhere. And she's making all kinds of meals. And, oh, you brought her home. That's your first day. Oh, and JP was, he had autism. He had the thing where he would walk on the tips of his toes and bounce around. And his mom was like almost was crying and hugging me when when I met. This is my mom, and she's, you have a friend, She was like, oh, here's some cocoa. Here's what do you want, And so she's stacked up all these cookies, and I'm going, well, thank you, right? This is wow. I wish my mom could, Anyway, she go and again, the most amazing thing about this was not that, but she had two pearl handled 45s in a crossover bandolier holster. And she's wearing a Donnery dress and an apron, baking with two pearl handled 45s. And she goes, JP, why don't you take your new friend down to the basement and show him the 50 cal? And they had a 50 caliber machine gun, which is artillery in a range that you could fire in their basement. You just want to fire that? And I go, no, I'm not. And then they had these, how they had these, snap-on tool things where you have tools, they roll out really thing and they have the rubber. Yeah, they have these red things all over the place with hundreds of guns, right? These guys were armed to the teeth. And they had NRA. I never knew this is in the 50s or early, 50s. And they had NRA posters everywhere. Anyway, I would come and have dinner and sleepovers, and everyone shot a gun. On the weekends, everyone went out to the country where they had a farm, and they shot their machine guns, and I learned how to shoot. And this is in the 50s before anyone. We had little earplugs, and then we had headphones, and then we had goggles, right, and even masks, right. I mean, these guys were them. If everyone in America treated guns like these folks did, there'd be no problem, right? And they basically, and so why were they this way? Because their great grandfather, whoever, started the NRA before it was the NRA. These were Second Amendment folk, and they knew their Constitution. I learned before Uncle Leo, my Uncle Leo on my mother's side, he had the Constitution in his pocket. He was a sheriff. He would anyway. So, and then my next friend was Debbie Soul, who was amazingly gorgeous in the third grade, and her Kim Romano and Danielle, and there was Mary Goldstein. Those four girls, and they were really attractive little girls, really smart. And none of the girls liked them, and the boys were scared of them. And they were always like pulling it, Mia, hey, this Debbie girl came over, and she said, so that guy in the suit, who is he? He's your friend. He's strange. I said, he's not strange. He's just a little different, He's not like everybody else, but that's cool. You should get to know him. He's really an interesting guy. And so, really? And I said, yeah. So JP, a week or so later, every day, JP and I have, and we don't go play kickball, because nobody wants us on their team. We don't do this because nobody wants us. We're the new guys. Nobody wants to talk to us, right? And the bullies, first off, they tried to get a rise out of me. I didn't even know they were there. They just kind of went right over my head. They said mean things, went right over my head. Didn't even hear it. And one time, they started to say mean things to me, thinking a rise over me, and they kind of went to, and we weren't in school. We were like on the street someplace, and these bullies kind of pull up on their bikes. Anyway, so this guy says something mean to me, it goes right over my head. I come, huh? And then one guy, because JP we were both small little kids, even if they're, we were like the smallest. Anyway, so I go, well, look at how funny he's dressed up. He looks like a little monkey. And they grab him by the thing. And he goes in, he takes his gun up, and he whacks the guy in the head, pistol whips him. And this is a big kid. He's probably in the 7th grade. Just wham! And then he puts the gun right in his mouth and says, you ever do this again, I'm going to pull the trigger. Puts it away. Everyone was like, they didn't go to mom and dad. They didn't, because he was scarred, when he was in high school and we were in 7th grade. And, when JP and I, because I was like, but we had to, with JP, me, Vincent, we had the two Vincents, right? And they're both Italian, and both their names end in S. So it's Vincent 1 and Vincent 2, or Vinny and Vincent, right? So one wanted to be known as Vinny, and the other was one, I'm Vincent. And he stayed small, and he became an admiral in the um, um, not Coast Guard, but Merchant Marines, right? I mean, he was the guy who they had running super tankers. And who else? There was Buzzy and Ralph and Harvey Kleiman. And so we, you know, uh, Ralph was a black kid, the best athlete. He was like running track in high school and when he was in third grade. I mean, this kid, and he was, amazingly handsome, right? Just right, and smart, could read, could write, could cipher. And so that was everybody in our crew was, smart and had a really good talent, right? Of everybody. JP was basically the Merc, the assassin. Um, Buzzy was the movie star. He was the poster boy. Because who he really was, I didn't get to know Buzz who he really was until he went to college, and I happened to. He got into Duke, but he didn't have the money and didn't get a scholarship. Right, he just missed out. He was a football star, but he didn't get a football scholarship. And so, but they wanted him in there because he was a movie star, right? So they said, well, go make some money, go get a job. If you can get this much, we'll match it by that much. So it took him, a semester. And so he had all through high school, and I wasn't going to I was going to prep school, but I knew all these friends from third grade to eighth grade. And then my parents sent me to a seminary. Oh, you want to be a priest? And no, I didn't want to be a priest. I wanted, by that time, by seventh grade, those four girls, I was their toy boy, meaning they really, because they were real women. I mean, Kim Romano was dating the football coach. I mean, she was like something out of Playboy. All these girls were, and they were smart. And the fact that I liked their brain first, and I wasn't even quite aware of their bodies, and that's how I became aware of female bodies in the seventh and eighth grade. Both these four girls, individually and as a group, um, basically because we had a fort that was kind of I lived out in the rural part of the suburban area, and there was a Mr. What was that? There was Young's Farm and the Anderson Estate. Between the farm and the estate, there was miles of open space and caves and culverts and Young had his own dump. So we used to go to dump and pull out wood and amazing. That's why I really got into being an anthropologist. Stuff these guys would be thrown away. So we would take it and we built a fort right near the stream that was right by. And people are always really stupid. They put their garbage pits right near the river or stream, so it pollutes the water table, right? So anyway, yes, humans not the smartest pencil in the box. So we had unlimited resources, and we built some really great forts. And so these girls were, if you drove to where this was, yeah, it'd be like 15 miles. If you cut through the woods, if you went from the town to the suburb part to into the woods, right, it was only about a mile or 2 miles. So everybody would just, and the other thing is, we had school buses. So after school, everybody would, because half these kids walked to their home and they lived in the town. But they could get on the school bus. Yeah, they didn't like, you're not on this school bus. Everybody just kind of got on the school bus and the bus would go. So often, my crew, those six guys and those four girls would get on the school bus and right there. And the girls, once, we had this club, they had the clubhouse for all of us, right? And then there was the girls, because there was only four of them and, 6 to 8 of us. There was that. And then we built other clubs for different adventures, right? And so the girls had their own club that they said, this is the girls' club. We can invite you in, but you just can't show up. So I was I was an honorary girl, and I started that out early when my sisters were Girl Scouts, and she was the Girl Scout leader. So she couldn't just leave me at home because I would turn it into a flying saucer and take it out into the universe. She had no idea what by the time I was 4, I was doing stuff that she would just go. I mean, I electrocuted her. I don't know how many times. So so I was a brownie. She actually made me a brownie uniform, right? So I was always an honorary girl, right? I was, not, and I'm not gay or transsexual or, I have a lot of friends who are gay and transsexual and every LGBT thing. They're part of my family, not a problem. But I like women. My first wife said I was the best lesbian she knew. Girls, if you know what I'm talking about. So, and other women always complimented me on my kissing skills, my oral, my oral tradition. So, so that's I learned it from those 4 girls. So Kim, Debbie, uh, were amazing, right? So I've always viewed every woman that I've been with is first and foremost my buddy, my soul partner at that moment. Oh, I swam a little something sideways. Oh, I'll take one of these. B12. Start hitting your bees, kid. Because if this thing ever, I have a sense it's going to pick on the Asian. Um, this 19 and given it a G something 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 19. So I just call it 19. So if 19 takes off, that means there was something before 19. One to 19. There were interims in there. I have a sense that 19 is definitely focused towards Asian cohort. But the thing about viruses is they mutate. Now, this thing is a very severely engineered bioweapon, if it is. If it is, I shouldn't say it is because I don't know. I'm looking at the crumbs that I can pick up. But if it is a severely engineered um, bioweapon, it's going to stick true to its engineering. And so, and I'm out in the middle. Let's see. What caps? Y. Can't spell. Neither's my phone exactly. Um, Now on the laptop. Yeah, me too. I have to do this on the laptop. My phone won't let me do it on the fly. Oh, and I religiously misspell and use poor grammar on purpose. And you should always look at what I'm trying to say, misspelled words, and my poor grammar. So that's why you need to go to X-rated, XRATTED.blogspot.com. And Lana and Graham, have you guys gone and what do you think of my writing? And I'd like some real critique, not, oh, wow, this is great, Joey, you're the best. I mean, I like that. It's good, it kind of rubs that ego part of my, but let's see. I don't know all. I know a lot, but I don't know all. And that's why I stay alive. I want to know more. Do you ever see that Spielberg movie, The Raiders of the Lost Ark, the last one, where the aliens, it's a 15. He saves himself by jumping in a refrigerator in a nuclear bomb test. Um, and there's this Russian, girl with a sword who the smartest Russian, and she's trying to figure out everything. There's that scene at the end when all the big heads get together, and she's looking them. Never look at those guys straight in the eye. I want to know all. I want to know all. And they go, you want to know all? Good. And they burn her brain out from the inside out. Well, I don't want to know all. I just want to know. There's a big difference. Yes, that's exactly it, Lana. Al knows what the owl knows. Very good. Exactly. 100%. That's it. And that's why I keep saying, don't believe a word I say. Let's see. Yes. Now that would be fun. I mean, if I could go into being president, just being me, that would be okay. But you know what I would do? If I was Bernie, what I would do at this minute, right? I would say, listen, guys, and this is why Bernie's in on it. He likes being the Mitch. So if Bernie really wanted to make a difference, really, 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 what he would go to, okay, you know, once after Super Tuesday happens, and he has more, you know, guys to go in that convention, but he doesn't have 51%. He will never, because that's why they had 10 people there to if it was just Bernie and somebody else, Bernie would already got it by now. But why they have 10 people in it is so the numbers he'll never get above 51. And unless he gets to 51, he won't get the nomination the first thing. And then it'll go into an open convention and everything will end up with Bloomberg as running for president for the Democrats, which will be a shoe-in for Donnie. But I don't think we'll even get to an election. They're going to use this pandemic as, we need that martial law, right? And that's one thing the Chinese are doing. They're using it to scoop up all the people who have been complaining, right? Now, that's why I don't complain. That's why I say, hey, listen, I've worked for the Hidden Hand. I worked for all these guys, in the weird way that I do things. And they know me. That's why, the AI guys, one of you guys is Lane and Graham, maybe the two people there. And it's going to be 1 hour, 56 minutes. I'm getting a little hungry, so I might shoo off. Let's see. Yep. Storage was on cable. Yep. Folks, peace to all. Cheers. I'll see you, Graham. Jane, what did you say about Andy Warhol? You work for him? Yeah, I work for him. Yep. You have to go back and I said a lot of shows about working for Andy Warhol, being part of that. So that's why it's one of the main, people go, how were you one of the main dudes in the Soho art movement in the 60s and 70s? Working for Grandpa Stahl, there were only a handful of really good electric supply places in New York City because it was run by unions. And so everything in New York, I don't know, it probably is still, was fixed, right? So there was Vica, there was a place in 42nd Street. There was one place right in Washington Square, right on 16th Street, where the road does this. And it's, and if you knew the people who ran it and had basically, like me, so I worked for Grandpa Stahl. He had an account at, he helped open every major electric supply store. He had, his cut in every, those three, Vica, the one on 16th Street, the one on 42nd Street, which were three big ones. There was a couple big ones in Queens and Brooklyn and a couple big ones up near Harlem. And, but Vica had everything from like 14th Street down. The one on 16th Street had everything from 14th Street up to 38th Street, and everything from 38th Street up to where Harlem started was this one in 48th Street. So anyway, I had accounts in all three. And Frank Ficiano, who owned Vica, was like my godfather, one of my godfathers. And when his nephew, who he truly loved as his son, got cancer, and I took care of him, and I took his, I had a business, and I went and helped Frank run his electric business because his nephew was like Superman. I mean, he could do the work of 12 guys, and it was a union job, so it was hard to get that job. And the guy who took orders over the phone was a drunk, so he couldn't depend on him. And there was this other person and couldn't depend on that. The only one, Vinny, his nephew, and he got cancer, severe cancer. He went from being a strapping, amazing, he looked like Arnold Schwarzenegger, to being a pipe cleaner, right? And that was right about when I was really getting into herbalism. And he had a nice house in Queens, but he looked so horrific. And he didn't, the only thing that kept him alive, he was married, had 2 kids. So he just said, "Listen, honey, we made a little apartment at Vica for him, and he stayed there, so he didn't have to commute, right? And on the weekends he would go home, right? And I would drive him home. Frank would let me, drive his car, and I didn't even have a driver's license. I just drive Frank's car anyway. Um, and I took care of that guy and what I did herbally wasn't like cure his cancer, but made it so he didn't have to take chemo, because chemo is the thing that made him look like a pipe cleaner. And he didn't want to, and I just kept wanting to do it to get some money. And he said, "No, I'm not doing this." "Well, you're going to die immediately." And, my little soups and teas, kept him alive for another 8 months, where he could like get everything to a point where he was happy to die. And he was comfortable. He didn't have pain. He didn't, he got a little more stem and stern. So those 3 shops, I could just walk in and take whatever I want, make a list and hand it to the guy and walk out. And they were happy I did that because I knew their stock better than they did. So they didn't have to take one of their countermans, have to go hunt all over the place for it, right? So I was up there at 16th Street, and I was like, I had a big box of stuff, and they had turned into computers. So you had to have the number on it. So I had half the numbers, and so I had picked all the stuff, had it in a box. I had half the stuff written down with their numbers. I had memorized, not their whole stock, but anyway. So I needed someone, and I was, eating donuts and drinking coffee and eating popcorn, and that's what they have at electric supply places. Good coffee, donuts. Donuts wear out by 11 a.m. and then they have popcorn. So sitting there eating the last of the donuts, and because this one place, this guy really liked. I don't know where he got them, but he had this jelly, peanut butter and jelly donut, right, with white sugar covering, and coconut donuts. And I don't know why, but those 2 donuts I wouldn't liked, and so you could be there at 1, and there'd still be a few of those. Anyway, so I'm in there eating the last of those, having some popcorn and coffee. And this guy comes in, "I need an electrician. I need an electrician. Andy needs an electrician." And the guy who's like, you know, runs the place, not the owner, but the runs the place, comes out from his office. Says, "Let's over the hub." I need it. Now, Andy, this guy know who he is because Andy's been buying all this kind of crazy stuff from this electric supply place. And that's why this guy's running in here. And he looks at me, he goes, "Al, you doing anything?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm not doing anything. I'm just eating your donuts." He goes, "Why don't you go with this guy and see what the problem is?" Because Andy just kept going in there and buying stuff, and then, not really, he's not an electrician. So anyway, and then he started sending guys like this guy, a cross between, I have no idea how you could generalize what this guy was. So, because Andy had this crew of people that he made movies of, and they were like freaks anyway. So this is one of those guys, and I go with him, and it's right. Andy Warhol's The Factory was right in a factory building that was right on Washington Square. I think 14th, 15th, between 14th and 16th Street. 15th Street's here, and so it's either on one side or the other. And it was facing east, right? So it's on the north side, the west side of Washington Square, facing east. So it got pretty good sunlight. So it's facing the park, right? So we go into the place, and you could smell, electricity is part of your smell. You can smell shorts. You can smell things cooking. You can smell electric fires, right, before they burst in the flame. So he introduces me to Andy. I have my little bag of tricks, my testers and stuff, and my really good flashlight. You can tell a good electrician by how good their flashlight is. And, I kind of walked around and said, "Okay, let's see." And they had one little fuse box. And they had a mammoth electric service into a trough with one little fuse box. Because it was a factory, and there were had enough electricity to run gigantic machines, but they took all the machines out, and they took all of the electric pipe all the way to the disconnects. I mean, the trough had, holes in them where they had pipes going up to disconnects and other, but they said, well, just a little fuse box that was left for the lighting and a few outlets. Well, Andy Warhol and everything, he had like, 300 amps and 3,000 amps running on a 200 or 100 amp fuse box. And it was fuses, right? And they kept blowing their fuses. So they were smart enough to put pennies into the screw fuse. So there was no fuse. It was just straight on current. So that's why everything was cooking. And I said, okay. I said, so Andy, this is a problem. I showed him. You've got all these movie lights. You've got all these, things where you're doing silk screens, and so each one of these things is taking like 1,000 watts. And I kind of wrote it down on a piece of paper. And I'm like 15 years old. Andy's in his 30s. I'm 15 years old, and he's the kid. I'm the teacher, and I'm like saying, drawing it on the blackboard and saying, see, you're using about 40,000 amps and you have all of 100 amps, and you've replaced all the fuses with pennies, and you're melting the pennies and all the wires from 1911. So it's rubber, not insulated with, and covered in canvas. And that's that smell you're smelling. And at a certain point, boomo, this place is going to burst into flames. So this is what you need. You got all of those, you know, things doing silk screen. I'm going to run out of that hole, going to come a pipe, disconnect, run that over another pipe over to a circuit breaker panel. So you don't need to have any fuses, just hit the switch, right? And then another one over to where your movie thing is, and another one over to where your little apartment is, and another one over to where all the these are called sub feeds. You're going to have sub panels. So I put in about 10, right? And then after that, I put lighting. Okay, so you got to make movies. So instead of having these things that are totally Rube Goldberg, why don't we do like they do it in the movies? We will get these called scoops. I know, I can go to Brooks Van Horn and buy them cheap, and we're going to put pipes up here, and you will be able to have different corners of your movie set with different lighting, and all you have to do is hit a switch, and bingo, it'll be bright as day. Bingo, this will have shadows. This will have this. And it'll be fixed, perfect. You don't have to touch anything. Really? He kept going, really? You can do that? Yes. He's still got 15 years old. Yeah, oh yeah, I could do it. Well, you got all these minions. I'm going to, get them to drill the holes, hang the pipes, do the, they fall off the ladder, big deal. And I have other things to do. Come in the morning, I'll get people working. This is how unions work, right? I'll come at lunchtime. You and I'll go have lunch. I'll take in this place over here that is, the workers, Waldorf Astoria. And so it was like, wow. And he was really he was a wow kind of guy. And he loved it, the way people could do that for him, right? Because he would, So, and that's how I worked for Andy Warhol. I was his electrician. But, I was also a photographer. I took pictures, right? And he was a photographer. So we talked about photography, right? And, he had ends in the art world, and I had a few, but he was a guy who, got me into 420 and Brooks Van Horn and what was the guy who owned OK Harris? He always had a cigar. His name will pop it. Anyway, that was his gallery, OK Harris. And so if you ever see the movie about Basquiat, right? And David Bowie is playing, I think David Bowie plays Andy Warhol. And there's a beginning scene where, what's his name? The guy who played Jesus Christ in The Last Temptation of Jesus, he's playing me, because the opening scene is this guy putting in cable, not cable, but track lighting, and, Basquiat's on the ground, his helper, drawing stuff, right? And Basquiat was a guy I found off the street. And I said, hey, what are you doing? And he was turning tricks. And I said, come on, let's, he was also known as Samo, right? He was like, he met my buddy who, did the stuff in the subways. He liked that. So, that's kind of, and so that opening, so, oh, what's that guy's name? It'll pop into my mind. A movie star. Played Jesus Christ, Last Temptation of Jesus. He played a lot of other movies. He also played the Green Goblin in Spider-Man. Um, anyway, he was playing me because he was up on a ladder, wiring a piece of track, and Andy was going on, Al, you should, put your electric work on plywood and what was the guy who owned OK Harris? And the guy in OK Harris always said, why don't you let me sell your art? And I said, I'm an electrician, artist, mystic. I don't want to, I see what the art world does to people because all my friends who were really successful artists were nuts, right? It twisted them up like a pretzel, right? I mean, Gary Blue was at one end and Andy Warhol was at the other end of this successful nuttydom of the art world. And that's what look what it did to Vincent van Gogh. No, I liked making art. It was an expression. Hey, if you want to buy this, and these guys bought a lot of stuff from me and gave me, but the thing they gave me was access to the art world. That's all I really wanted, to play in it. So if someone were to make me, president, POTUS, that's how I would roll as president. So what Bernie needs to do is go, okay, this is fucked up. This is what they're doing. See, Democrats, Republicans, two wings of the same bird. Adam Schiff is as bad as Carrot Head. Madam Pelosi's worse. She's like, he should really lift the veil and do it in one shot when he's doing this. When they have the next thing live debate, he should say, look, I'm going to take, his opening. This one on America. This is what's going on. You're being had, and you're all going to die. But you make me president. I'm going to be president. Cassie David, I'm going to have her as my vice president. I'm going to have who's the guy? The lawyer guy, Ralph Nader as my attorney general, and have people like that. And he announces his cabinet before he even runs for president, so he can have those guys out there talking about what needs to be done all over the place, not just him, all of them. And all he, and so then when the debate comes with the Carrot Head, there is Bernie along with all of these guys. So, they say something, Carrot Head lies right there, and then all of them just go straight, all 8 of them, shine like a laser onto Carrot Head, right? And all Carrot Head go, boo-hoo, boo-hoo. That's all he can do, right? And Bernie can keep saying, listen, we got to get rid of this, this, college of morons, and we need to bring back, what the republic is. We're not a republic. We're a, plutocratic fascist state, Now, Bernie did that. Things could change, right? Now, if I was slipped in between the hidden hand and Bernie, so I could be Bernie's like whisper in his ear, hey, Bernie, you need to do this. And I could negotiate with the hidden hand. This is going to be the best because Bernie's going to write, just like FDR did. He saved capitalism, right? He gave the plutocrat state another 80 years, And it's politics doesn't matter, the ideology doesn't matter, religion doesn't matter. It's the connective tissue to love's co-creation that matters. So this little pandemic that we're right on the edge of the cliff is, and it's just like my truck that drove over a cliff, but instead of like, and, in the movies, woo, boom, the big truck ripped the gas tank off so we didn't burst into flames. And instead of going off the cliff and, exploding down at the bottom of the valley, we went 20 feet and hit an outcrop where the truck went this. And then it went boop and tumbled down. That's kind of, we need a slow tumble into and that's why Gene Roddenberry made Star Trek. because he was saying, hey, we can do this. We have all the technology to do this. And he just put it out there. He called it wagon train in space. But no, well, it kind of was, but we can do this. And that's why I'm doing Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Alba, because we can do this. We got it all. We don't have to invent anything, you know? So, AI, I know you're listening. Just give me a job. You know, I'm ready to come back. I'm ready, you know, coach put me in. I'm ready to come back, you know? And this is the perfect time. You know, we have this window of opportunity as of, you know, it's Valentine's Day. This is ding dong. You know, this is the moment. Valentine's Day 2020 will go down in history as either the end of, you know, Homo sapien sapien as we know it, or the beginning, and it won't be transhuman. Transhuman will be in there, but it won't be the next step. And that's another reason why they're doing that. They want to wipe out Homo sapien sapien so they can replace it with fracking transhuman robot. You know, do you really want to? You want to look at what the world will look like as a transhuman robot? Look at you know, Mayor Pete. That guy isn't. I mean, when he walked out of that building after you know, the first run where everything was totally fracked by an app. Oh, good. You know, who'd have thunk it that an app would screw it up, right? But he walks from, you know, after the Mierda hits the fan, and you know, CNN is saying Mayor Pete won, you know, because the DNC is doing everything they can to get rid of Bernie, right? And Bernie is playing along because he is not doing what I'm saying. He knows what's going on because he signed on to let Hillary run, you know. So the only person that the carrot head could win against was Hillary, because there was no other person who was more hated, more corrupt. You know, she makes the carrot head look like you know, Mary Poppins. You know, so and that's what's going on here, gang. You know, we're it's in a very strange state. Let's see. Wait a minute. Didn't understand that one. Let's see. What one didn't you understand? Yep, sold. Ha ha ha. Alpha POTUS. So, okay, yep. Storage was worse on cable. Yep. And poor folks. Peace to all. Cheers out. Hey, Graham, keep doing the caps. I can read you're the best. You know, all you guys can put it in caps. What did you say about Andy Warhol? So I just gave you the story about Andy Warhol. Let's see. Jane, in early 80s. Yep, I went to New York on an art trip. My friend called Andy Warhol, and all he said was, like polishing the Big Apple. Uh, Al's done that. Yeah, really, pretty much done that. And that's why I'm not there. Meaning, I pretty much got to a place in 1988 where I kept repeating, I would do it differently, this way, that way. But I'd done everything you could ever imagine to do in New York City. And all the big political people, there was this woman who was like the head of the Democratic Party. And she realized that I could read people like a book. So she would take me to all these insider things. And you know, I met Donald Trump. I met all those people. I met every political person. You know, I met Hillary Clinton in the 80s before they were rolling the Clintons out for him to be president, you know. And she was part of the CFR and all of that. You know, so I had to in on that. And my mentor, Billy Kluver, he was like super main. He started this thing called Automation House. Go Google Automation House, Council on Foreign Relations. And I was like their poster boy, you know. They had all these toys, and nobody. It was this little door off of Park Avenue. Nobody went in there. It was supposed to be their outreach to the public, and they were like basically telling the public in 1963 what the world was going to be in 2030. That was basically Automation House, right? Did he love them? Let's see, Jane. Did he love them all? Those 5 skink a day? Who knows? You know, acid fueled orgy confuses me because sex. Yeah, exactly. That's why I don't do drugs. I'll smoke. I like a little boo with like the '70s show. Where you need to get just a little bit stupid, not psychotic. Well, if you had a dream about a huge crow, you should go read, uh, you know, Stephen King's thing about the end of the world. What was that movie called? That book called movie TV show. That and the other person you should go check out is Crow House. Max Igon. Right? I think those two things would watch those and it would fill in the blanks of your dream about the crow. And I would love if you've got that dream still stuck in your head pretty good to either give us a 411 here or contact anybody who wants to talk about something specifically personal. You can get a hold of me at the dude awake 42 at Gmail. And there are a lot of people contact me there. And what's interesting, the folks who are part of the uh, live chat, they leave comments so that kind of shows up on my stream on my Gmail, but they don't get too personal. A few of you do, but not a lot of you. Now, a lot of you get very personal who watch this show religiously. You're part of the 50,000 who watch but don't comment, and you do comment to me on my Gmail. So that works pretty good. And I get a lot of folks there. So I often don't respond right away. And once a lot of people, it's like you go down the line and I don't, that's why I sometimes miss getting a hold of folks because it's just me. I don't have a crew. Just tweeted, you're like on Tweety Pie. Uh, see, Tweety Pie and Ma Jones, no idea. Right. Retracted a message. Okay. Jane, I love you too. I love all of you. And Jane, if we were together, I'd be more than loving you like the live chat crew here. But I can't go anywhere. And it's almost the time for people to come. But if you guys come here, you can't be infected. You need to bring a few of your best tools with you and a little money, so I don't have to take care of you, right? If you're coming here, you've got to be ready to be part of the crew and self-sufficient, and ready to do what we have to do, right? And have a lot of fun. So, Janie Poo, you want to come, very soon? See, but I would say April 15th. When is tax day? Whatever tax day is, that will be the bing of of what's going on, or this is just a bad flu, and it'll kind of go back down into the cohort of the data, right? But we will actually know by mid-March rather if this is a genetically engineered bioweapon to cause a wipe out half to 3/4 of the human race, or if it's just a bad flu, right? Something on the order of the Spanish flu, right? It's that was, I mean, unless that was a geoengineered bioweapon left here by folks from the way past, and it was left as some kind of time capsule. When these morons start doing shit like World War One, okay, let's release the Kraken, So anyway, I'm really getting hungry now, and I got things I want to do, and it's tiptoeing between is it going to rain again or is it going to be sunny? So there's some things I want to do outside before it really gets ridiculously cold. It's starting to get cold. Last night it was 60 degrees, and when I went out, about 11, it was I was standing out on the porch, and in 10 minutes I was like meditating in the fresh air, it went from about 50 something to about 30. You can, so it's like, whoa, okay, a front's coming through. So that was the front of pushing all this 4 weeks of rain off to the side, and we're getting a little cold weather. And as long as it gets cold and no snow, I'll be happy, right? And I'll be happy to see the sun. But sometime in March, end of March, April 1st, if you're ready to camp in a hardy kind of way, you know, and it would be good. I'm like hardly using electricity. Be nice if somebody showed up and let me put 100 or $200 into my electric. They let you put money so you can pay forward, and that's that's the mark of a public utility, because private utilities won't let you do that because they want you to get in that bind where you can't pay that electric bill. They turn you off. Now we have to charge you the $800 fee just to hook up. They don't do that in my place. Um, they let you put money into their piggy bank, and and I have a very good public utility. We were saved by the bell, and the bell is ringing. Oh, it's look 2:25. Okay, I'm going to say goodnight and have breakfast. I'm getting hungry. I've been talking for 2 hours and 25 minutes, and now 43 seconds. Okay, and